Hello and welcome. In this guide, we'll explore Git sources in Codefresh and how they play a vital role in managing applications using GitOps. Git sources are fundamental to how Codefresh operates as a fully GitOps platform. Every manifest should be represented in Git, and to support this principle, every application you create in Codefresh is stored in a Git repository. Codefresh manages these repositories through Git Sources, which are actually Argo CD applications dedicated to syncing Argo CD manifest to your cluster. There are two types of Git sources in Codefresh: standard and restricted. A restricted Git source allows you to enforce rules on which applications can be stored in a Git repository and how they sync to the cluster. Let's walk through the process of defining a restricted Git source. First, we navigate to the Settings page and select the runtime where we want to add the Git source. Since Git sources are tied to a specific runtime, this step ensures they are managed correctly. Now, let's add a restricted Git source. Just like with standard Git sources, we start by giving it a name. Next, we select a Git repository to store the manifests. I'll choose a pre-prepared repository using the main branch and the root path. We also have the option to specify file paths to include or exclude from syncing. This provides more control over which files are managed within this repository. Now, let's move to the next step. This is where restricted Git sources differ from standard Git sources. With standard Git sources, applications sync to the same namespace where Argo CD and the runtime reside, typically the Codefresh namespace. However, with restricted Git sources, we need to define a target namespace for syncing. This extra layer of control allows Argo CD to validate applications before they are deployed. Let's enter a namespace name. It must start with CF, so we'll use CF example and continue. Now, we can define two key aspects of the application stored in this Git source. First, we can specify which clusters and namespaces applications are allowed to deploy to. This is especially useful for managing multi-tenant clusters, ensuring that each team can only deploy to their designated environments. Second, we can restrict which Git repositories applications can sync from. This adds another layer of security, ensuring that only approved sources are used for deployments. Any application that does not meet these defined rules will not be synced to the cluster. Once we create the Git source, a corresponding resource is committed to the account's shared configuration repository. From this point forward, teams can select this Git source when creating new applications. We recommend setting up a separate Git source per team and granting write access only to the Git repository associated with that team's Git source. For more information about standard and restricted Git sources, be sure to check out our documentation. Thank you for watching.